Want to learn more.
Right. And cool, but that's the real you, not a bot, right?
I won't tell. I won't tell.
Hello and welcome to episode 134 of Rockstar CMO FM. The M is for marketing and the F is for, well, you decide. As you're probably wondering, does the world need another effing marketing podcast? I'm your host, Ian Truscott. I'm no rockstar, but I've picked up a thing or two over the last 20 years on my tour from sysadmin to CMO, and each week I chat to the true rockstars, my fabulous guests and chums, and share with you some marketing street knowledge that hopefully will inspire your inner rockstar. Come say hello. We are Rockstar CMO on Twitter and LinkedIn, and proud members of the Marketing Podcast Network. This episode is recorded on Friday the 30th of September 2022. Hope you've had a good week and you are well, safe and staying as sane as you need to be. On this week's episode in the Marketing Studio, Jeff Clark shares his tips for buying marketing technology. I go backstage with Max Koziolek, CEO and co-founder of the conversational marketing vendor Spectrum, and we wind down the week in the Rockstar CMO virtual bar where Robert Rose shares a thought over a cocktail. But first, we need to pay the bar tab. I'll be back in a moment.
We'll be right back after this word. We'll be right back after this word.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Christy Heiler hosts a fantastic podcast called Own It. Christy, tell us more about the show.
Own It is all about celebrating women and non-binary advertising agency owners. We talk about buying out of the boys' club of advertising because less than 1% of ad agencies are owned by women.
And where can people subscribe?
You can find the podcast at untilyouownit.com. We're also on the Marketing Podcast Network at marketingpodcast.net. And of course, you can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard her. Go subscribe.
On to our first segment, the Marketing Studio with Jeff Clark. Jeff is our resident Rockstar CMO advisor and former Forrester Serious Decisions Research Director. And this week, we talk about buying tech. Welcome back, Jeff, or I'm welcomed back to the Marketing Studio with Jeff Clark. How are you, my friend?
We're in the virtual studio, and we're ready to roll.
We
Turn
are
on the
indeed.
tape machine.
I should make some sort of big clunking noise now. So, but
Well,
then
you
again,
actually want the whirling, the
Yes.
big, the
Yes.
big tapes on reels.
yes. Well, you know that if people have listened to some of the music we've played, they probably think that's how we actually listen to music, you and me. That and 8-track.
Going back to my reel-to-reel, no, 8-tracks. Yeah, no. Not a good experience.
All right, let's get back on the topic. So this week, as promised, we're going to dive into buying marketing technology because we talked about this a bit last week when we were discussing CDPs and reading the script. And I need to be careful about this as a representative of marketing technology vendors. There are nearly 10,000 solutions in Scott Brinker's marketing technology landscape. Therefore, well over 10,000 hungry wolves with quotas eager to make you Little Red Riding Hood. Thank you for that line, Jeff.
You're welcome.
We covered some of
So I just want to throw in my caveat is that I like you have been on the side of the wolf, and two, that wolves, they get a bad rap. They're not that bad, they're apex predators just like we are. So anyway, we should just be comfortable with them, and that's all I'll say.
All right. Well, we covered some of this stuff last week when we were discussing CDPs, and we sort of started straying into some of the advice that we would give if you're buying any kind of marketing technology, right? So I thought that we'd focus on it this week. And you also covered it in your article, which has got a fabulous title, Beware the Martech Industrial Complex, which people can find either in the show notes or at rockstarcmo.com. So when dealing with these wolves, what say you, Jeff?
So I think that the one thing is that I want to distinguish between like what we had covered before and the beware the industrial complex is kind of like just good MarTech planning perspective. So we're going to assume for this discussion that you've read that, you're doing that, you're doing your due diligence down that path.
Yeah.
And so what I was thinking of was kind of like 7 lessons to make sure that you're focused on solving what you need. And that's, as much fun as we're making of the Martech vendors. I mean, they're selling products. They've got salespeople. They've got quotas. They're doing their job. But the thing is, you want to make sure that you're solving for your problem. And so, it's time for you to buckle up and, do this right and make sure that you don't get hoodwinked.
Absolutely. And I think it's fascinating because I think a couple of weeks ago I spoke to a Martech vendor leader, and he was saying that for years we were a solution looking for a problem, right? And that's what a lot of these sort of 10,000 hungry wolves are doing, aren't they? They're not focused necessarily on your problem. They're focused on their solution and creating for you the vision that you've got the problem. I'm a bit disappointed there's 7 lessons, mate, because I thought we normally stuck to F in 5, but here we go.
Yes, so we'll have to step through these quickly.
What's your first?
First one is own your journey, and I think the thing that I like about this is that so far in marketing, it's like a lot of times we try to think of our customer's journey, but in this case, we want to think of our own journey. So I'm assuming that the person who's going to take this advice is going to be the champion for solving the problem. So that's one of their personas, and they're going to walk through the, and obviously there's different descriptions of buyer journeys. From where I came from, there's the education phase, the solution phase, the selection phase, and little sub phases. And so, typically you don't get serious with a vendor until you hit selection phase. But obviously there's various touch points along the way. And so what you really want to do is to be able to, think ahead to kind of mapping out that journey that you're going to go on. And as we go through the other points, it's kind of like, think about where am I intersecting, the vendors, the consultants, the other decision makers in this process, et cetera.
Yeah, I think that's interesting because I had a similar conversation. I had a conversation the other day with a marketer, and it was like, they were going to look at something. And I said, well, what if you like them? You know what I mean? So are you going to go ahead? But so you need to preserve this process, don't you?
Yes.
What are you? It's great that you're having that conversation, but what are your requirements? What's the process going to be? Who else should we look at, and all that kind of stuff? So that's good. So own your journey. The first one. What's the second one?
Second one is just to ask yourself: do you need a consultant? Are you for what you're doing? Are you over your head? So if I run their website and I want to get into personalization, and I could be beholden to what the vendors are telling me, but I may want to just kind of, if there's nobody else within the organization, I may need to kind of step out and find somebody who can help me go through this. I remember when I was at Progress Software years ago, and we were replacing our internally built CRM and marketing automation platform with off-the-shelf products. So we actually hired a consultant to kind of come in, help us go through the whole process. And certainly if you're a large company, that's why you have the Accentures and the Capgeminis around to help guide you through purchasing technology from some other vendor.
Yeah, but when you say about when you're talking about consultants there, I mean that can come from any angle, and I'm surprised you didn't put this one first, Jeff, because I think you could probably help some people with this.
Yes, I could, but again, first thing, you own your journey. You're bringing in the consultant. It's not the other way around.
I'm kidding, but I mean, all sorts of places you can go to get help, isn't there? And including your old crew at Forrester and stuff, isn't it? That can help you. So that's the first 2. Own your journey. Do you need a consultant? What's number 3?
Determine where you're going to introduce the buying team to the vendors, because so early in the from a tech planning perspective, you want to understand who all is going to be involved, and if you kind of map out the data or the processes, you'd say, I need to get sales ops involved, or I need to get customer support involved, and so you may need to get IT involved. So it's like who is on your buying team, and when do you think any of them are going to interact as you kind of map out that buyer journey? Because in some cases, you may have somebody who's like a key influencer who's going to help you. So they're going to help you do the education. Maybe they're going to reach out and talk to some vendors. And again, you just want to be more in control of this process, as opposed to somebody from left field coming out saying, I talked to ABC company. They are wicked cool. Let's go with them. And and then that derails you for a little bit on your journey.
Yeah, I like that. And that really touches back to the first one, doesn't it? About owning that journey and understanding that. And Nice bit of Boston there as well. Wicked cool. So, so number 4. What's your fourth?
Leverage RFIs, RFQs, RFPs. I don't know if there's other RFs out there, but there's requests for information, requests for quotes, requests for proposals. So I mean, these are all they can be, and of course sometimes if something's simple, you don't necessarily have to go through this process. But if it gets a little bit complex, it's like this helps you steer the process, and also helps you, when you are connected with a vendor or a set of vendors. You'd say, okay, we're at the point where we're not ready for a quote or demos or anything. We're just in request for information phase. So, and then you want to make sure you're communicating clearly with the vendors about what you need at each of those steps for each of those milestones, and who else. I mean, they'll always want to know. So who else is involved? Who else are you talking to? And again, if until you get down to that selection phase where you're actually going to say, there's 3 vendors where it's time to get quotes, it's time to go through demos and stuff like that. You still want to be, at that point, they really want to know who else you're considering. But be open and honest with any vendors you're discussing this with.
Yeah, and as I've spent most of my career on the vendor side and in pre-sales and stuff, and spent a lot of time with RFPs, I think there's a couple of things I would say about that. One is try and make your RFPs as specific. Oh, well, we could probably do a whole episode on RFPs, right?
We could.
But I like that last point, is to be open and honest, because there's a to get a really good RFP response, the vendor is going to have to make an investment in you, and you need to make it clear to them where you are in the process and what you're willing to commit into this process.
And also, to be kind to your vendor friends to don't make them jump through hoops just for the sake of jumping through hoops. And that's the other thing about communicating clearly, is like, because I know as being part of organizations where it's like you keep churning out RFPs, but the people aren't serious, and it's like, you want to be honest about where you are in the decision making process.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you are just at the moment in that education phase, people will help you, right? And they will help you with education, but tell them clearly you're only in education at the moment. You're not. You're not looking to buy it at this point, and don't put it on your forecast.
Yes.
All right. So let me just do a quick recap though. So we're owning the journey. We're wondering whether we need a consultant. We're determining when to introduce people from our buying team into that journey, and we're going to leverage RFIs, RFQs, and RFPs. What's the 5th?
Don't be a guinea pig. And it's really good that wolves and guinea pigs don't exist in the same environs, because they would probably, guinea pigs would be, a nice treat for them. But anyway, the thing is that for most of the technology that we acquire in marketing or even in sales, it's like we're not trying to be the new kid on the block with with a cutting edge technology that's not necessarily ready for prime time. But if you're looking for something, certainly there's organizations, particularly in the business to consumer world, that they're trying to do things to get unique advantages in terms of connecting, engaging customers. And so in those cases, it may be that you partner with a technology company to deliver something that doesn't exist for other companies. But again, that's like 1% of the time that may be applicable. And certainly I've seen, like I know when a product like People AI came out, which, it's like collecting all this information so you can help build, pictures of your accounts and the buying member teams and all. Wicked cool stuff. And so the early people on that journey were people for whom getting that kind of advantage was essential on vis-a-vis their competitors. But I've had some examples where, like when we were getting a new marketing automation platform, and we asked a vendor who was more business to consumer to add some features that were more for the business to business, and they totally, and I certainly won't mention the name, but they just totally failed. And it's like, then you go through, a year of trying to make the product work for you, and it's like, well, that's not, we're actually here to do the marketing. We're not here to. We're not here to be beta and alpha and whatever pre-alpha testers are for tech firms.
Yeah, no, I think there's an interesting balance, and again, could be quite a good conversation, because I think that like you say, you want to get unique advantage. So you do want to understand what's coming, and it's a bit, what's that Gartner curve, isn't there?
Oh,
where
the,
you're an early adopter, or you're the mainstream, or and then and then you have that other one where you're on the
trough of disillusionment.
Yeah, the trough. So I think it's good.
That's
if
the hype cycle. Just
the hype cycle. Yeah. So I think those reports are great if you're a marketing technologist or a leader of marketing ops, to stay aware of what's going on in the market. But where you step onto one of those trends is the key thing, isn't it? You don't want to be too soon, but then you don't want to be too late either.
And it could be that you've got a vendor who you trust, who's introducing something. When AI was being introduced into content management systems and DAMs, and it's like, okay, you're rolling out a new feature. I feel pretty good that don't have a lot of risk exposed in adopting this new version.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, that's fine, but that's different than saying, I'm going to work with a new technology company on an entirely new type of product that is, again, is very different from what anybody else uses. And again, the only justification to do that is if there's that would give you as an organization an extreme advantage in the market.
Yeah. See, and this pulls at wanting references and case studies and stuff like that. I mean, during this conversation, I'm feeling a bit for the startup Martech vendors out there that are constantly facing this challenge of, not having credibility in the market. Why don't they have credibility in the market? Because people won't take that risk with them. Why won't people take that risk with them? Because they don't have, So I think
that's where they have to partner. That's where with early customers they have to partner and understand that it's like almost the customers, almost like they're investing in them because they're investing their time, let alone their money.
Well, also, I mean, it's priceless for the vendor because some bright spark founder came up with an idea. Until it actually starts adding value to a proper organization, it's not really a thing, is it?
Yeah.
It has to be a demonstratable thing. All right. So they were that was our fifth. And as we move out of our comfort zone of 5 effing things, what's the sixth?
In new waters here. Determine, and this is kind of part of when you're looking at mapping out the journey, is like where do you need demos, proof of concepts, because those are things that'll make the vendor expend a lot of time and energy and their own time from their probably their technical staff and stuff like that. So to make sure you're using the best of their time and make sure that it's like, when do I need to have either myself or members of my team see a demo? Do I need to get a proof of concept before making a purchase? Because sometimes you'll make the agree to purchase the product and then say, okay, now you need to build the POC just for us before we get into rolling out and implementing the whole thing. But if it needs to be part of the buying process where you need to understand, am I going to get the benefits that I want to get, or am I going to cause data issues, process issues, people issues that I wasn't aware of? The proof of concept helps with those. And so again, it's just determine, because those can be really in the purchasing process, those can be really key things. In addition to price, it's like you're going to get the quote, and it's like, and it works, and we've seen it work. Okay, now I know among my 3 vendors or more who I need to pick.
I think I'd like to know where you sit on a paid POC, but also I think that a really good demo that uses the customer's data or images or content or whatever the product is kind of starts to bleed into being a proof of concept, isn't it?
Yes.
You start to get that feel, oh, this can work with me, or if the vendor actually asks you about your processes and who's in there, and they map that into the product for the demonstration, you can get a good sense there, can't you? Yeah. And before you go into proof of concept. But how do you feel about paid versus unpaid POC?
You probably need to determine up front is that going to be necessary for me to make a good decision? And if it is, then let's budget for it. Let's make that, the budget for the new technology, shouldn't just be the license or subscription price. It should be the training. It could be, if there's a paid POC, that should be included. If the consultant's included, so it's like you've got to think about which could be another thing we could add to this, but we don't want to go over 7. Is just like what's the full cost of this particular implementation of this new technology?
Well, there's also another element of cost, which I think this whole thing touches on, is how much time are we willing as the client to invest in purchasing this thing? And it's going to be way more successful if you make the time as well as asking the vendor to make the time.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I also so we're up to 6. So what's your 7th?
Don't be driven by discount deadlines. and I hate to say this for any of the technology the reps out there, is that it's just so grating when it's like, okay, it's getting close to end of quarter. I can get you 10% off if we make the decision before the end of quarter. I can get, and as much as, and of course, if the stars align and you can take advantage of that, that's fine. So I'm not saying that it's bad to take advantage of discounts, but it's like you just don't want to make a hasty decision. You want to make sure you've gone through your process, and that, by getting that 10, 15, 20% off up front, you're not causing 10, 50% more expense down the road because you need to fix something, or you've got into something where you're going to need to spend extra money on consultants to make it right. So. Yeah, no,
and I've seen this from the vendor perspective, and I've seen it played very well by the client, in that they almost look at you and go, yeah, well, in 3 weeks' time it'll be end of quarter, mate. So let's have a chat then. And I've also, you also see, the desperate rep trying to close the deal and just basically fucking it up, because nobody wants to see that kind of behavior. That hunger, like your wolf analogy, that hungry wolf look. And you think, hang on a minute, where's the value if this guy can make such a big discount? But so that's a really good one. So if I just do a quick run through. So first one, own your journey, which seems to be a common thread through all of this stuff, is that you're in control, right?
Yep.
Do you need a consultant? And then I think the nice thing about consultants as well is they've probably done 10, 20, 100 of these in the last sort of year or so, right? Whereas this may be your first. So it's always good to have somebody to help you on your side. And also remember that the vendor also has that advantage. They're doing these every single week, right? So if you can have a trusted advisor with you to help guide you through that, is great. Number 3, determine when to introduce your buying team to vendors. Very much related to that journey thing. Number 4, leverage RFIs, RFQs, and RFPs. Number 5, don't be a guinea pig and be eaten by the wolves. I really didn't want to go with that wolf analogy. But
so why do you keep mentioning it?
And number 6, determine the need for a demo, proof of concept. And number 7, don't be driven by discount deadlines. I think that's an excellent set there. Jeff, there is actually, because I dived straight into this because I knew that we were going to be short of time. But how's the weather?
Well, I'll just say that I hear you're coming up the coast for us, because we have Hurricane Ian unfortunately crossing into Florida, which means it'll make its way all the way up to New England. And so I'll wave at you at the eye. I'll wave at the eye of the hurricane as you go by.
As I skim by. Well, nobody asked me about the naming rights for that. So
I know, and I've never heard of a Hurricane Jeff. So I feel shunted somewhere.
Yeah, maybe you're next. All right, and then the last item on our agenda. What song are we going to play out with, Jeff?
We're going to play out with Gold by Prince. And this was your suggestion. I won't go into what my suggestions were, but anyway, but there's a great line, and it's a great tune, and almost any tune by Prince is up there but this, all the glitters ain't gold. So, just remember, there's a lot of nice shiny toys out there, but all the glitters ain't gold, or more appropriately, is not gold.
Yes, well, I'm very much looking forward to playing out with a bit of Prince. I think the first time on the show in 134 episodes, a bit of Prince. And I'll drop that in there. And Jeff, will you be back in your marketing studio next week?
Yes, I will be back.
Excellent. I'll see you then, mate.
See you then.
There's a mountain, and it's mighty high. You cannot see the top unless you fly. And there's a molehill, a proven ground. There ain't nowhere to go if you hang around. that glitters and gold.
Thank you, Jeff. And that was Prince and Gold from 1995, and some great tips there for your next marketing technology purchase. Speaking of marketing technology, time to go backstage with my guest, Max Koziolek. From a background in law and politics, is the founder and CEO of the Berlin-based startup Spectrum, a conversational marketing platform that powers many of the world's leading chatbots. Marketing teams from disruptors to Fortune 100 companies rely on Spectrum's platform, conversational AI, and customer success to design experiences for their customers. It's a fascinating topic. Hope you enjoy this conversation. From Max to Rockstar CMO FM, how are you?
Very well. Thank you for having me on the show.
Oh, you're very welcome. And where am I speaking to you from today?
I'm currently in the very sunny Berlin in Germany.
That's very nice. I'm very jealous because I'm in the UK and it really is not sunny today. So that's a start. We're absolutely obsessed with the weather on this show. So that starts off really well. So for people who have not met you, Max, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. I'm Max. I'm the CEO and founder at a company called Spectrum. Doing this now for 6 years, and we help large brands to use conversational marketing, which we will talk about in a second.
Yeah, so you're a software vendor that provides this conversational marketing functionality, right?
Absolutely. And myself, I have a background in law and take over or oversee all the commercial things at Spectrum.
So that's interesting. So you're a software entrepreneur that has a background in law. I didn't realize that.
It turns out it's very, very handy when you deal a lot with GDPR, CCPA, and all those kind of things, and contracts with your customers and so on. It's very handy. It saves a lot of money.
Yeah, I can imagine. And so let's dive into Spectrum. What is it exactly you guys do? And this conversational marketing, what does that mean?
So it means that we help brands like Ford or Zalando or the really big ones to use channels like WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, Instagram DMs, Google Business Messages, and so on for their marketing. So not for support, for their marketing to make money.
So it's mainly as it's outbound when you say conversational. So it's the marketing part, the important part of conversational marketing, where it's not like chatbot support and that kind of stuff. It's more about engaging with a potential customer.
Absolutely. It's like it's a chatbot it's a chatbot on the one hand that helps people to find what they're looking for, to get things done, and I don't know, maybe to a product finder for them. That's one part, and the other part is we help to re-engage people with push notifications, which have an 80% open rate. So that's like 10 times better than any email.
Yeah, for sure. And you do that across all channels. So you mentioned WhatsApp, you mentioned Facebook, and chatbots for websites. So it's like a consistent conversation that happens across these multiple channels.
Absolutely. The users are already there, right? So WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, these are the biggest platforms in the world. They have 1.5 billion people on there. And this is a trend, another phase basically where brands again have to go where their users, where their customers are, and these customers are now on these channels. That's where they spend most of their time.
Right. So let's dive into what you guys mean by conversational marketing then, and that's the idea that you're having this two-way conversation with your audience across these different channels, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So in order to be present on, for example, WhatsApp, it's a completely new interface, right? So it's a chat interface, and in order to be there and to have meaningful engagement with your audience, you have to provide an automated conversation, because on the one hand, that's the interface, so you need to have a conversation. On the other hand, you have 1 million customers, so you have to automate it, because otherwise you have no chance. And luckily, with our technology and a lot of advancements that have been done in the field of natural language processing, this is now possible and creates a great buying experience.
Right. So it's more than just connecting a human being to a marketer. You've actually got some AI in the middle that's actually fielding the questions, that's sending the promotions and that kind of stuff, right?
Correct. It's a lot of, it's best of both worlds, right? So on the one hand, you need the human to script a few things to provide the rules, and then there's the AI which is helping when the rules are not working anymore. then the AI takes over and
Right.
support there.
Right. And then your customers, how do they make that distinction between marketing and service? Because I've always found, or I've always given advice, that if you're going to open up a new channel, you need to be ready that your customer will want to be supported on that channel. You can't just, be dropping things. You can't just, send people a message and about marketing stuff. And then when they have a problem, not let them come back to you on that same channel. So do you need to have that sort of thing seamless? Is that the sort of thing your customers do?
That's a very important point you're making here. It's where we spend a lot of our time to build these handovers, as we call that, to basically distinguish, is that a pre-purchase question? So do you have that sweater in blue or in a different size? Or is that a post-purchase question? So they already are a customer. This is something we hand over, where we make sure that we integrate with customer service tools, so that this goes directly to an agent that then can take over and solve the problem for the user.
Right. Because we're seeing chatbots on a lot of websites now, particularly B2C websites. So would your software be that primary chatbot that somebody interacts with first, and then it gets sort of triages and somebody else will pick it up, some technology takes over behind the scenes?
That's exactly how it works. And especially interestingly on these social platforms, the big majority of the questions that people have are actually pre-purchase. So it's very easy to understand, because even for the largest brands in the world, still the majority of the people are not their customers yet. So that's why from a numbers point of view, that's very easy, that still people have a lot of questions about the service, the product, and that's something we would answer to create, again, a buying experience that is pleasant. But if they are a customer, they have a problem, then we hand this over to someone else that has more knowledge about that to solve this.
Right. And are these brands now seeing an expectation from consumers that they need to be on these channels and need to be not just driving advertising and pushing stuff out? They need to get this conversation going?
Oh, yeah, totally. It's also sometimes it's very challenging for brands also to meet these expectations, not only to be on this channel, but also the speed and the quality of the support. That's very, very tricky for a lot of brands to deliver that. Which, because they're not meeting the expectations, then they're leaving the channel, which is obviously also not the right approach to that. But that's a really difficult situation to manage for a lot of brands.
Yeah. And when I talk about this kind of thing in my world, I often refer to years ago. I had this experience with Hertz where I was in a city in America, and it was like a Seinfeld episode. You're too young to know. It was like a Seinfeld episode where I got there, and when I turned up, there was one little mini car in the middle of the empty car park, and I'm like, "You haven't got the full size car that I rented?" Because I had colleagues and stuff that I needed to drive around, so I needed a larger car. And then they're like, "No, that's all we have." So they hadn't kept the reservation, to use the Seinfeld quote. And then I went online and I started chatting to their social team on Twitter, and their support was excellent. They were very responsive, and everything was great, but they couldn't change the fact there were no cars. So, you've got to have that social team enabled to make a change for the consumer. And you're fully into the channel, and that you can offer that service. And I think that's that important part of the handover that you were talking about, right?
Without the handover, I mean, everybody, users actually don't mind at all to talk to a chatbot at all. It's still, because it's still messages, it's still very human for them, even though that they know that this is a chatbot and a robot. They don't mind until you have to solve the problem, right? If the chatbot solves my problem, I'm happy to talk to a chatbot. If I'm getting, the same stupid answer over and over again, and I'm in this endless loop, and I feel like in a Black Mirror episode or something like that, then people don't want to do that.
Right.
Then they just want to. That's why I think a lot of chatbots got a bad reputation.
Right. And is that the biggest risk to brands when they venture into this? Is that what your customers are worried about when you talk to these guys and they've had these bad experiences and heard things from consumers? And if so, how do you overcome that? And is it going to get better than that?
I think it's about because we come doing this for marketeers, for marketing teams. We make sure they they build a good user journey, right? So having a really high quality user journey. If you spend millions and millions on your app to create a good user journey, you don't have to spend so much money on these channels yet, but you still have to create a good experience here. But if you mindfully craft that experience and have a clear goal, you have safeguards if something goes wrong, then there's no user complaining about this, and we track the sentiment of the users, and the sentiment is to 98% is positive. It's very positive because people again, you help them to find the right product in a fraction of the time that they would need to do this on the website or elsewhere. So they are very happy with that. So we don't produce actually this bad experiences. It's only stuff that happens on the customer service side.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of chatbots. I mean, there's a lot of talk that people like millennials don't like to phone anybody and talk to them, right? And the truth is, none of us really do, right? So, well, I don't think so. And you find a really useful chatbot and you don't care what's the other end if it solves your problem. And then that's splendid. So that's conversational marketing. And I wandered off the questions I prepared for you a little bit there. But you've recently published a report on conversational marketing, the state of B2C conversational marketing, which I'll include a link to in the show notes. Tell us a bit about that report.
Yeah, so we went out and wanted to know from marketers all around the world how they see conversational marketing. And I think we interviewed over 400 B2C marketers across the globe. And we asked them about conversational marketing, about their challenges they currently have, about customer preferences, and if they have already tried out messaging platforms like Instagram, WhatsApp, or Facebook Messenger.
Right. And so that's the report. And I think it's great for any software vendor to go and do some research into their customers. And I think it's great to share that as well with your customers. Research is great content. But as a spoiler, and I'll encourage people to actually download the report, what insight came of that you think is most important that our listeners should pay attention to from this?
I think there are a lot of good, very, very good nuggets in there, or very deep insights about this. I think it's that 72% of the ones that tried it found it in the initial attempt very, very promising and very, very convincing. So it has a very high success rate. I mean, in marketing, you have a lot of different tactics, and for different brands, just because it works for some brand, it doesn't mean it works for you. So there's a lot of test and learn attitude, and a lot of tests go wrong. I think the success rate of companies using conversation marketers is very, very high. So I would say that's probably the number one insight that's in there.
All right. So was there anything that surprised you? I mean, because you're doing this consumer research, right, on the space into your category that you're entering in. Was there anything that surprised you about some of the reactions you got?
A little bit, yeah. One thing, and that it was a very clear Instagram DMs were the very clear winner for being the most effective channel, and I'm from Germany, so Germany is a WhatsApp country, right? So it's a completely green country. Everybody loves WhatsApp. My grandma is on WhatsApp, and she is 88, right? So I thought WhatsApp had an edge, but Instagram apparently across. If you look at everybody from all the over 400 marketers, Instagram is the most effective one.
Right. Well, that's interesting. And then, so the report is focused on B2C, conversational marketing. That's primary. Oh, by the way, who are your typical customers? I mean, you mentioned a couple of them earlier, but who do you typically serve?
We work with very large brands, mostly completely global brands. So with the biggest shoe retailer in Europe, with the largest fashion e-commerce company, with large automotive brands all over the world. So that's usually our customers. So very, very big customers, but they all have one thing in common, and that is that they face high customer acquisition costs and they need a high customer lifetime value. And that's if you don't have that because you only sell something that is $25 and people just do that very regularly, that is fine. Then you probably wouldn't need a spectrum. But if you have high customer acquisition costs and you're a global brand, then
Right.
you should probably talk to us.
Right. So it's about convenience and service. I mean, nowadays maybe people are getting a bit price sensitive now, but certainly there's no differentiation in delivery times and things like that. So that kind of stuff, price and delivery doesn't make any difference anymore. So it's all about convenience, and it's about service now, isn't it? That's differentiating these brands. So that's probably incredibly important to them. In terms of the B2C world, right? So you're focused on B2C, and I'm from a B2B background, so are a lot of our listeners. Do you think that conversational marketing is just as important in B2B, and what could we learn from what you guys are doing?
I think interestingly, here the B2B world is even ahead of the B2C world. I mean, usually you have all the trends that are coming from B2C and somehow then end up in the B2B world. So I don't know, for example, emojis, right? So they started really in South Korea, and then they took over, and then they landed in the Western world. In the beginning was only for kids or for teenagers, and now everybody is using them, and we message each other in Slack with emojis. So that's really how it went from consumer to the corporate world. That's usually how every trend goes. Video was the same. I mean, Loom is a great example of someone who early saw that video becomes important and then created a solution for the enterprise, and it's working like crazy. Here it's the other way around, mostly because companies like Drift or Intercom, which very early on put the chatbot on the website, and I think Drift is also really the company that created the term conversational marketing, and they have a great marketing team and a great founder. So they are ahead, basically. They playing this game for a longer time, much longer time, and brands, B2C brands, they cannot rely on their website, because that's not where the magic happens. It's really they have to go much earlier into the funnel and have to figure out where the consumers are. And they have to go on the channels like WhatsApp and Instagram DMs. So they have to go there instead of B2B companies can, still wait on the website and convert you there. So I think that's the difference. So I think here in this case, the B2C world can learn a little bit from the B2B world.
Right. So that's an interesting point about where you sit in the funnel in the buyer's journey. And I love the way that you volunteer Drift there as a pioneer in this space. I wasn't sure whether to mention them because I thought you'd feel they were a competitor. But absolutely, I mean, in B2B, Drift clearly were the people that defined conversational marketing. And I think it's interesting as well that there's a difference in intimacy between B2C and B2B purchase, in that you're more likely to engage on WhatsApp or something with a B2C purchase, perhaps, than maybe I would with a marketing technology vendor that I'm using, that I've made a B2B purchase from. So that's an interesting difference. I'm just looking at the time, right? So I've got to move on to the final question. We have a regular feature on the Rockstar the Rockstar CMO swimming pool, which I had to explain to you because you're not of the generation where people threw things into swimming pools. But it's where we throw all the bullshit, snake oil, and overhyped trends that plague this industry we love. What would you chuck into that?
I think I would throw in two things. On the one hand, they already trashed themselves, but I think everything that evolved around NFTs and the last NFTs, I think they belong absolutely there, completely overhyped. And the other thing is probably I would throw a big portion of the creator economy in there, because I think that's a term that is fairly misleading, and so I would probably throw that in there as well, because I know a lot of people are just referring to that and hope to get away with that, which I think is often not the right thing to say.
Okay, well, there are two fairly controversial choices there, although a lot of hype around NFTs at the moment, and where they find their place in our marketing. And as for the creator economy, I think we probably need to dig into that and to talk about that a little bit more.
Yes, it is.
And anyway, Max, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much. And of course, I will include all of your links in the show notes. But when the listener spins the dial on the interwebs, where are they going to find you?
Oh, they find me on Twitter, of course, and I think on LinkedIn is also the best one to reach out in case you have any question or want to learn more.
Right. And cool, but that's the real you, not a bot, right?
I won't tell.
Well, thank you very much, Max. I look forward to speaking to you again. Cheers, mate.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Thank you, Max. I'll include all his links, including to that report, in the show notes, and you can find Spectrum at spectrum.io with no U. Right, it's the end of the week. Time to wind down the Rockstar CMO virtual bar, where I find my friend and content marketing guru, Robert Rose, chief troublemaker at the Content Advisory. Good evening, Robert. What are you drinking?
Oh, hello, my friend, and welcome back to the bar.
Thank you.
It's, since Content Marketing World, it's been a little hot minute, I think, since we were here. And it's now, we're on October. I mean, it's amazing to me that we're this late in the year already. Yes. And we're into the fourth quarter. And so, I thought for tonight, since we are in the cusp of October, as it were, we would celebrate Oktoberfest.
Nice.
And keep it really simple for this evening's drink, and just crack open a couple of good, let's call them Bavarian beers, because that feels right with with Oktoberfest and all of that.
Yes.
And Marzens, I think they call them in Germany. And just have a few October, like those giant ones, right? That the beer maidens will carry like 9 of when they come out, and
Yes. Oh, that's splendid. Yeah, I spent a lot of time in Munich. I was the CMO of a German software company, and I've been to Oktoberfest twice. In fact, Kathy joined us once because she was a speaker at one of our events. Your colleague, Kathy McKnight. And indeed, that is a wonderful way to while away an evening with some of their lovely lager. However, even though I have many of their steins that I liberated while I was in Munich, let me see what the ingredients are. I've got my desktop bar. Yeah. I have. I'm going to put ice in mine, which is completely wrong. And I am going to use the most Scottish of Bavarian beers. Hendrick's gin. It's funny, somebody the other day, I don't know.
There it is.
Yeah.
Hendrick's gin. Yeah.
I had a new listener the other day, colleague at work.
The most British of beers. Yes, I think they call it. That's the tagline for Hendrick's gin, I believe. If you're looking for beer in Britain, try Hendrick's.
And then I'm going to give it a bit of a fizz, so it is a bit like the lager that you have there, with some.
There it is.
It's tonic water from the wonderful people at Fever Tree with some. It's not hops, it's cucumber they've got in there. So I'm going to give this a sip. That is uber refreshing, my friend. Yeah, I'm down with this, and I can drink one of these every week.
Yeah.
And what are we calling these?
We'll call that beer, is what we'll call that.
Prost, my friend, prost. And where will we be drinking these beers, or have you already given away the location?
Well, of course, it's Munich, right? We have to go to Munich for this because, I mean, the heart of Oktoberfest and sit there and, and we'll get some good schnitzel. Yeah. There is nothing I like better than a good schnitzel. I
love it too. There's a nice restaurant in London actually called the German Gymnasium that does a good schnitzel too. So you can find them outside Germany, but a lovely schnitzel, some beer, nothing better than that.
Yeah,
I once had Glühwein in one of their winter markets, and a colleague managed to set fire to me because they had flaming Glühwein. But anyway, that's a different story. So we're in Munich, memories of Munich. We're in one of their really cozy bars with the people with the lederhosen and the dirndls, I'm guessing. And it's cold outside because it's October. Conversation turns to marketing. What's our marketing thought for this week, Robert?
Well, it is something that I ended up having a number of conversations about while we were at Content Marketing World this year. Mm-hmm. And it's something we've talked about before on this show, but it's one that just seems to not want to go away, and it has to do with stakeholders. And it's interesting to me because we think of stakeholders, right? In our business, and we throw around that term a lot. And in marketing, that list is long, right? The people that are involved in our success or involved in our process. And because marketing and content tend to touch just about every other function, whether it's the business leadership, IT, sales, communications, public relations, product, of course, external groups, even, partners, investors, just about everybody, right? So is a stakeholder. But it's funny because marketing to a lesser degree, and certainly content to a greater degree, is usually treated like an internal agency. And they look at all of those stakeholders as customers. And those stakeholders see themselves in most cases as customers. So there's this weird thing where I look at a content team, for example, a content marketing team, and I'll say, oh, well, okay, so your stakeholders are sales and, the demand gen team and IT and sales and all of those people. Are you stakeholders in their process? And they sort of look at me and smile and sigh and go, no, we're not stakeholders in their processes. They are our customers. And so literally the content marketing team is simply the internal, copy shop, right? The Kinkos of the business. And this is the recipe. It is a recipe for failure because it doesn't scale and it doesn't, work because you can't communicate clearly when you're looking at all your stakeholders as customers, because you can't service them all in the same way. So someone's always going to be disgruntled about this, or at least gruntled, if not completely disgruntled. You can't delight them, that's for sure.
No.
And so one of the things that I've started to really press on in businesses and with clients and with those that, will listen to me at all is that if you're in leadership or you have the opportunity, first of all, the very first step is you've got to switch that. You've got to switch that idea that, content marketing is, you've got to set the establishment that content marketing and content strategy is a specific discipline. It is no more or less strategic than any other strategic discipline in the business, like accounting and sales and IT and everything else. And then once you start to reboot that, yes, of course, you need to get stakeholders involved because you must do that. You must get alignment with the other activities that are going on in the business. But it is looking at stakeholders as investors rather than customers. And that's a good way to look at it, I have found.
Wow.
Because if you look at them as investors, you can start to segment them better. In other words, they are investing in your success, and therefore, but you're not there to serve them. In other words, you are there to lead them and give them information and gather information from them. And they're there to help you in many ways succeed, and you're there to help them succeed in their investment. But you're not looking at them as a customer, as an on-demand service. And if you then segment them into, things like, your influencer investors, your champion investors, your detractor investors, your decision maker investors, all those things, it puts a new lens on the way that you look at your stakeholder interviews and the way that you align your activities with the priorities of the business. And once you do that, you can then look at it like a process, right? So it's very much like investor relations, where it's not set it and forget it. You're constantly in communication with these investors, talking with them, getting information, relaying information, aligning with their priorities and needs and interests, but not serving them as customers. And of course, now what does that leave out? Well, it leaves out customers, right? Because customers are stakeholders as well, of course. Customers are stakeholders, but not all stakeholders are customers. And so basically, it ends up being a situation where if you can get aligned on that then you are actually working in favor of the real customer, not your internal customers. And I think it's just an important piece of the way that we look at stakeholder relationships.
Right. That's really interesting. But I'm thinking from the other side as well. I mean, if you're going to, I mean, this idea of stakeholders, I mean, it becomes sometimes meaningless as a word in terms of describing that relationship, almost as you are saying it there. And investors sounds good to me, but how does that feel to the stakeholders, in quotes? Do they need to change their behavior in the relationship with the content team in order for that relationship to work?
Well, it runs the gamut, right? I mean, in many ways, you know, I have seen situations where there are both extremes, and it does tend to lie at the extremes. There's usually not a lot of middle ground here, but what I tend to find is that it's either you're asking people to shift their perspective to say, no, content and marketing is not your on-demand vending machine or, you know, your service or your internal agency, and you need to look at it differently. And them going, oh, well, you know, and being very disappointed because they were getting what they wanted out of it, right? It's, you know, if I want a new one sheet or I want a new brochure or I want a different hero image, I put in a request to my internal agency and they give something back to me. It's a service organization. So, you know, there is that reaction. There's also the reaction of, oh my gosh, thank God they're taking leadership here, because I don't know what the hell I'm doing. You know, in the absence of leadership, you know, some of these other functions have taken over. Like, you know, I talked to one VP of sales where he was like, thank God we finally have a head of content who knows what she wants. Because, you know, I've had to fill that role and I don't know what the hell I'm doing.
Yeah, I think that's interesting because I think you do get that. And then what you get requests for are the same stuff you've always done, right?
That's right.
No change.
You know, well, that's exactly right.
Yeah, the sales guy asks for a one sheet because he's always asked for them and nobody has said to him why, or how about this, or some other alternative response than yes or no.
That's right. That's right. I mean, it's a little bit like the waiter in a restaurant walking up to the cook and saying, you know, I think I want the steak with with French fries, and the cook goes, well, what did the customer want? And he goes, no. The waiter says, no, I'm your internal customer. You give me what I want because I know what's best for the customer.
Yeah. And that's often an analogy, isn't it, for the content team or for that kind of on-demand creative team within a marketing team is short order cooks, right?
Indeed.
So they just do what they're told. Yeah.
You know, what it ends up with is that they're, you know, the immediate way you can tell is I say, show me your editorial calendar. And A, if they don't have one, you know, that's the case. But B, if they do have one and it looks like a to-do list, it's basically just a to-do list of all the requests that's come in, then, you know, basically it's not a calendar. It's literally just how long you're going to wait for your order to come up. Yeah.
And plus, there's no editorial discipline then either, is it? I mean, because one of the things I thought you were going to say about stakeholders is that everybody's a marketer, right? Everybody knows or has an opinion about what we should be saying, what we should be writing. And if you're just a short order cook or Kinko's, you're going to do what you're told and you're going to create that thing. And then you've got 15 different subjects and topics floating around in the ether, right?
Well, there is a subtle level here that we've also talked before on this show about, and I've written about, which is the difference between content creation and production, right? And one of the keys of marketing and content, additionally, you know, in addition to sort of the idea of strategy, if you will, or planning, if you will, is the conflation of content creation and production. Most businesses, and this is the reason that scalability becomes a problem, most businesses look at marketing and the content team as a production team. In other words, they are there to execute ideas that the business gives them and put them into pretty packages. They're literally a production team instead of a content team, which is creating stories, thought leadership, utility content, how-to content, and even marketing content. And then as a business, we're making decisions about what those stories and thought leadership and words and pictures and ideas get packaged into. And those are two very separate processes that should be taken, but most look at it that way. And so when you get that sort of everybody's in marketing, you know, culture built into your business, it's usually because marketing and content or the design team is seen as a production agency, and basically everybody thinks they have great ideas, or to my earlier point, they don't think they have great ideas, but in the absence of great ideas, they're saying, well, here's mine, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, that's a great point. And we always come back to this kind of relationship that that marketing has with the business, in particular the content team. So I think it's a very rich vein of content there. And so if people wanted to learn more about how to run their content teams, and they were looking for somewhere that clearly is driven by a calendar, where would they find one of those, Robert?
Well, you shouldn't look at me, because we are definitely not driven by any calendar. We are, do what I say, not as I do, folks. We're doing the best we can, but we definitely could use a little organization ourselves in terms of our thematic calendar. But it's all at contentadvisory.net, our little website on the interwebs.
I love it. And when people spin the dial on the interwebs, where are they going to find you, mate?
Well, they'll find me these days mostly on LinkedIn. That seems to be an explosive challenge or channel for me at the moment. It's I'm having a lot of discussions out there.
Cool. I'm actually, in all seriousness, I'm finding LinkedIn valuable for both, sort of the business side and the day jobs and that, and the way that to reach B2B marketers, and as well for myself. I find that Twitter, the engagement on Twitter has gone right down. All right, that's splendid. And when can I start asking you about the progress on your book, do you think?
Oh, goodness gracious.
Not for another couple of episodes, no?
Yes. Yeah, you're going to want to save that for let's save that for another 4 weeks or so.
All right, well, I'll start badgering you with that. Well, thank you very much, Robert. And most importantly for me, will I see you in the bar next week?
Of course you will.
Excellent. I'll see you then. Thank you, Robert. Turning stakeholders into investors there. Great advice. So, that's a wrap on episode 134 of the Rockstar CMO effing marketing podcast. I've been your host, Ian Truscott. Thanks to Jeff, Max and Robert for sharing their insight. Please say hello to them. I'll include all their links in the show notes, which you can find on your favourite podcast app or rockstarcmo.com, where you can also find all our previous episodes. But most of all, thank you for dropping a dime into your podcasty jukebox, selecting our track and jiving along with us. So, does the world need another effing marketing podcast? You can let us know on the socials, or please drop a rating or review in your favourite podcast app, or just keep listening. I'm glad you're here. Next week, I'll chat with my old boss, Grant Johnson, CMO at Embers, about CMO mentoring. Jeff will be in the studio, and Robert will be back in the bar. Until then, have a great week, and I hope you'll join us again here next week on Rockstar CMO FM.
This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.